Prepare for starburst!
Hello and welcome to another episode of Tales of the Uncharted Territories.
Yes, hello, I'm Kaki.
I'm Kay.
And in between watching episodes of Season 4 of Farscape, we're coming to you once again with another fanfic because, I mean, as deep as we are into the series now, the sort of fanfic.net and all the wonderful fanfiction tomes are just teeming with goodies for us to enjoy.
I suppose that a lot of people had been getting at it for quite a while at this point, and
yeah,
the cup runneth over, so to speak.
It does. Strangely, in fact, like the sort of spoiler level is a lot of them are sort of locked in season 1 and 2, even though they were written much later.
Fair.
Yeah. So I might have some interesting insights every now and again. I think I found what might be a funny one.
Okay, that sounds good.
It's called In 16 Arns by Dreamshaper.
Mm-hmm.
In which
both literal and figurative fluff contained within... Oh no, wait, that's the author's notes. The summary is, John gets along well with small green and purple balls of fluff. So we've got trebles on Moya.
Yes. Yes. Oh, God, trials and tribulations, troubles. Do we have any other puns with it?
Oh, it's going to be tribulous now.
Oh, you're thinking about like a tribellion.
That would work, yes.
Handle with immense care. You have been warned.
Oh, yes. So, both literal and figurative fluff contained within, handle with immense care. You have been... Oh, yes, you just said that. Also, thanks to Mia, who bet at and laughed and agreed that a steady diet of sap is good for the digestion.
Well, considering how much angst we've had in our diet of late...
Oh, yes.
I think that's a welcome alternative. Character, storyline, Farscape are not mine, and I make no claims. However, this is mine, yes. And I make full claim, silly as it may be. Hell yeah, Dreamshaper.
All right.
Or perhaps Dreamshaper.
Dreamshaper, yes. Dreamshaper.
Okay.
Let's go with that. The bazaar was filled with bustling crowd... Let's try that again.
Edit.
The bazaar was filled with bustling crowds and strong smells, as well as a horde of animals he'd never be able to name. More foods than he'd ever been able to taste. Aliens so strange in form and feast and scent that he was reduced to frequent double takes, with a crinkled nose.
He knew he was gawking. A farm boy gone to town for one of the first times, but he still couldn't stop himself. The death glares Aaron was tossing his way, oh, I miss Aaron, were basically bouncing off him. The faintly amused glances Zahn, oh, I miss Zahn, sent him only encouraged his enthusiasm.
They'd been off Moya and in these crowded markets before, but this was the largest and the most diverse of any they'd explored so far. According to Zahn, it offered some of the finest food and herbs. Herbs are herbs. I mean, herbs because it's got an H in it.
Yes, exactly.
She was doing extremely well in trading for them, she told him quietly, far better than she'd expected. Dargo believed it was probably a good place to look for maps.
Star charts!
Yeah, they were still looking for those back then.
Yeah.
Rigel was finding dozens of collectible treasures, and Chiana was off undoubtedly doing some useful thievery. Erin had added 2 gleaming blades to her collection and had chosen one for Dargo. She appeared more than pleased with the quality, and he'd been making murmuring noises about teaching Crichton something useful.
Oh, and John was having fun. There was so much to see and sample, and he was full of energy. He couldn't remember feeling this light-hearted in quite some time, and wasn't about to dampen his own enthusiasm, not even for a lesson in weaponry from Aaron. Especially not since they were passing a stall crowded with small, fluffy creatures that looked up at him with kitten eyes.
Oh, what are they? He asked, wrapping a hand around Aaron's arm to stop her.
She gritted her teeth, carefully removing her arm from his grasp. These, Crichton, are trelasses. With exaggerated patience, she watched as he knelt down to pet one of the smaller fluff balls, one with fur a deep green colour and big blue eyes. Can we move on now?
Pets are food, John asked, ignoring her obvious annoyance.
What?
These are trellises, right? Are they pets or are they food? He stretched the green one under his chin, smiling. It reminded him very much of a tiny kitten, from the eyes that were narrowed in pleasure to the needle-sharp claws that flexed from each of its 6 tiny feet.
It depends, Crichton. I wouldn't eat one. Aaron knelt beside John, reaching through the thin wires surrounding the babies to scratch a slightly larger purple one. But the Hynerian might, if he were desperate.
The creature vibrating under John's hand rolled over on its back, allowing him to rub its plump, silky stomach as it looked up at him. It kneaded the air with its paws, and a tiny, rough hum slipped from its throat.
Oh!
Completely charmed, John laughed and murmured to it, unaware of Aaron watching on, bemused.
Crichton, Zan's already gone on ahead and the rest are dispersed as well. We have to go.
Just wait a minute, or whatever, Aaron. I think I want one of these. He didn't look over, keeping his eye trained on the baby, and didn't see her roll her eyes. He didn't have to. He could practically feel her do it.
We have no Edit. We have no need for a trellis, Crichton. 2, technically, since they don't thrive long when alone.
John rose, brushing his hands over the dust on his pants, and smiled down at Erin. She hadn't stopped scratching the little purple one, he noted, and was definitely an unwilling softy.
Ah!
And the green one was looking up at him with huge, patiently loving eyes. I have a need for trellis, he decided. Or 2.
This is a really good idea. This is really good for someone who struggles with loneliness and sort of separation as he does. Having something to, like a companion to care for and who cares for you is a really good influence. Erin gave the purple baby one more caress and rose, folding her arms and frowning while John and the merchant haggled. He was aware of that frown the whole time, aimed right between his shoulder blades. I'm sorry, I'm reminded of one of the McElroy brothers who once talked about a friend who has, yes, it's one of those distant stories, who had this thing where when someone was very mean or unpleasant, then he would take his revenge by waiting until their back was turned and then giving them a double middle finger, which he called a cold one right between the shoulder blades that they would never see.
That sounds almost like British, you know?
I know. So he got a cold one right between the shoulder blades, and it made him itchy. But he wanted the sweet, friendly little furballs, and Erin wasn't going to be able to stop him any more than she had been able to earlier when he was doing his hick impersonation.
They offered unquestioning acceptance, he thought, as the merchant loaded the 2 babies into a small carrying cage. Apparently easy to care for and hardy, they were perfect for life aboard Moya. And
he turned and braved Erin's scowl with a quirked grin. Come on, he said brusquely, imitating her accent and impatient tone. Okay, no, hold on. Come on, he said brusquely, imitating her accent and impatient tone. We'll be abandoned here and left to die if we don't catch up with Zal.
Erin turned on her booted heel, striding away quickly. For a second, John was almost afraid she was going to abandon him. But then she froze without looking at him.
She would never.
And waited for him to catch her.
She would absolutely never abandon him, would she?
Well, depends on when this is.
Yeah, Zan was still around.
Yeah.
So this would have been sometime in season 2, I think.
Yeah. So, who knows? She might have harboured sentiments like that at that point.
Oh dear. Oh yeah, he thought, grinning and tucking the case against his chest. She's a softie.
Zan laughed and cooed at little green and purple babies when John and Aaron caught up with her, and praised his ability to choose the most perfect ones in the litter.
Aww.
Dargo, when they spotted him heading back to the transport, was visibly frustrated. But when he saw the trellises, he softened, reaching inside the case to smooth one huge finger down a fluffy cheek. My son always had 2 or 3 of these, he murmured softly. They're sturdy pets for young children.
Aww. They met up with Rydell and Chiana at the transport, and the Hynerian licked his lips, but the thief growled at him and slapped his hand.
Try it, Your Eminence, and I'll find Hynerian suits my diet well, she hissed even as she petted John's prizes.
I was just remembering trellis stew. I certainly would not.
John let the babies out of the cage, kneeling on the floor and watching them tumble free. In seconds, everyone else was on the floor too, except Erin. She silently loaded the food supplies and other purchases, and got them headed back to Moya. Then she sat and stared as Dargo gently ruffled the fur along one little back, and Chiana rolled an undoubtedly misbegotten coin for the other to chase.
Oh. Yeah. You've all gone mad, Erin murmured to herself in amazement. Completely mad. Sorry, it's muting there. Edit. You've all gone mad, Erin murmured to herself in amazement. Completely mad. They're helpless and useless and annoying.
John looked up with a smile. Hey, Aaron, sounds like me, eh? Except we forgot to add adorable.
And insane. Completely. Have any of you been eating too many of Zan's herbs? Or herbs? Or is there an H in it? I mean, there's an H in Zan, but we don't say Jean.
Zahan. Jean. Oh, the Jean would work, actually.
Ooh, yeah.
Gif of Jean. At the mention of her name, Zan looked into Aaron's eyes and laughed gently. No, Aaron, it's just that like babies designed to arouse protective and familial instincts. Well designed, she added, smiling as the green baby wrapped a paw around one of her fingers.
Yes, well, I must be lacking those instincts then. Now, would you mind putting them back so we can go? Aaron swiveled, staring at the wall with a carefully blank face, as the rest of the crew reluctantly crawled off to the floor, and John gathered the babies back into their case.
You should give yourself some more credit, John whispered as he settled himself next to her, earning yet another glare. You know you want to cuddle them. Even Dargo dropped the warrior shield long enough.
I do not have a warrior shield, Aaron whispered fiercely back. I am a soldier.
And soldiers don't have any sides that like to cuddle sweet little fluffy things?
Not this soldier, no. Now, leave me be.
John settled back away from her and remembered her hand sliding gently over the purple trellis. 6 Arns, he whispered to the babies, who blinked their big eyes at him. 6 Arns and she'll be putty in your paws.
Aaron lasted 6 Arns, despite the fact that the purple trellis mewed at her whenever she came near and blinked enticingly when she looked at him. She lasted 12 Arns, even as the babies followed her on her rounds, pouncing each other and making little noises. She lasted almost 16 Arns because John and Dargo played with them on the terrace for a while. But then she went to fall into her bed and found her cushions overtaken. The tiny fluff balls had managed to crawl up, spread themselves across most of her space, and lay there, lazily sighing and batting their lashes.
She could feel herself melting into goo even as she watched. Crichton, come get your babies, she ordered over to come, turning so those big blue eyes were focused on her back, trying to steel herself against them.
They have names, Aaron, he said in reply, obviously close by. Startled, she turned to see him in the doorway, smiling at the trellises. Come here, guys.
Aaron rolled her eyes. They have names, she repeated, tone ripe with acid. Guys?
John just grinned and waved his hand at the babies. They tumbled end over end, rushing toward him, and he scooped them up very gently. No, hold them gently. Erin found herself pinned by 3 pairs of guileless eyes and crossed her arms over her chest.
You're a soldier, she reminded herself, not a weakling to be undone by sweet, friendly eyes, no matter whom they belong to. Well, whatever, she muttered. Just take them up to your quarters, please.
Oh, so they're on different tiers.
Oh.
Yeah. In reply, John strode over to her bed and dumped the babies on it, sitting down beside them. Come over here, he told her, looking at her out of the corner of his eyes as he tickled the smaller fluff ball. Unless you're scared, in which case go ahead and stand over there, as far away from these half-pound hairballs as you need to be.
I'm not scared, Erin muttered, deliberately relaxing her stance. I'm just not impressed by them. Hair doesn't ball, anyway. Hair doesn't ball?
Oh, hair balls, Aaron. Little balls of hair, not air. Hit your translator. He picked up the larger trellis. Well then, what are you waiting for? He held out the purple baby toward her with a faint smile in his eyes. Come over here and be unimpressed.
She looked from his face to the babies and back, and then, with a sigh, she stepped forward, gripping the creature by the nape of its neck and settling it in her lap, planning on not touching it any more than necessary.
Soldiers are not undone by fuzz, she reminded herself for the 1,000th time since reboarding Moya after the bazaar.
But the baby had plans of its own. The minute she was settled, it scrambled up her chest. Automatically, Erin's hands rose to support it. It cooed softly and settled against her collarbone, breathing onto her neck. Erin looked at John, down at the baby, and then, hesitantly, she began to pet the small, bony back.
16 Arns, she thought with vague disgust. A lifetime of resistance to the cute and cuddly undone in 16 Arns.
Madness, eh? Crichton murmured, cuddling his trellis. I suppose. He paused for a long moment, and quiet fell between them, broken only by the baby's hums. Then abruptly, with his eyes glued to the creature he held, he continued. I identify with them, Erin, in a lot of ways.
Helpless, useless, annoying, she said, echoing her earlier comments, not knowing what else there was to say.
And adorable, but yeah, useless, helpless, annoying, incapable of thriving on my own.
Oh, Dad.
He waited while her eyes rose from the creature she cuddled, and then he smiled at her, self-depreciating. But you'll find I'm hardy, Erin. I might be fluffy, but I always bounce back.
This is really good. This is really good. There was nothing she could say to that. She could feel something sharp-edged and honest between them, and she knew he was telling the truth. He'd been through things that might have driven 1,000 others insane, and had held himself together with fluffy good nature. Part of her might deride that nature, but she knew deep down that he had handled himself admirably. She just didn't know how to say it. A soldier's life was not conducive to easy admissions of that nature, and now I'm really wondering where this takes place. Like, is it... It could still be before a bug's life, because that's when everything changed.
Yes.
Right? You had Tiana on board, and you had Zan on board, but Scorpius wasn't in the picture yet.
No, fair enough.
And,
yeah, none of the things she just said would, make that an account for that.
Yeah.
We'll see. So, she turned her eyes back to the baby. Which is this? She asked as she gently pulled its claws out of her shirt.
Atlantic. This one's Pacific. They're kind of little for big names, and Dargo says they don't get much bigger, but those are oceans on Earth. A little touch of home. For a while, they sat in relatively easy silence, petting the babies to sleep. Then John shot... Edit. Then John sighed, shifting Pacific on his shoulder and edging closer. I'll take him now, Aaron. Go ahead and get some sleep. I'm now reminded... Sorry, our mutual friends out in California, whose dog Ramen, of blessed memory, he has passed over the Rainbow Bridge in the meantime. But they named the sort of he was an American Akita, and they have a sort of patterned coat, and the patterns on his coat they for some reason named Chashu.
Yeah. Chasu. That's basically it's the cuts of belly pork which you put in ramen. That's called chasu.
He had two of those big sort of chunks on his beautiful body, and one of them was called Europa. So when they explained, we found a flea bite on Europa, they had to really walk me through that before I understood where they were going.
I think it's a bastardization of chashu, which means roast pork.
You made that once.
Yes,
you made that once for us.
Yeah.
And
that's the red stuff you see hanging in Chinese shop windows.
Oh, it was very good, but it was an awful lot of work for something that is as good and almost identical, essentially, to the chashu that we can get from the Chinese place.
No. That was the roast pork belly that you're thinking of.
Oh, sorry, I thought that's what we were talking about.
No. It's different. That was roast pork belly. And yes, it took me 2 days to make. And it ended up tasting identical to the stuff that the local Chinese sell. So I guess we go now we know how that's made. And it's so much easier and cheaper to just go get it at the local Chinese.
But it's better when it's made with love.
Fair point. Thank you. Let's see, where were we?
Instinctively, I think is your line.
Ooh, yes. Instinctively, Erin tightened her grip before reluctantly passing the baby to him. Good night, she murmured coolly, waiting for him to go.
Not just yet, he whispered, and then his lips were sliding across hers, gentle as his hands on the baby's, with all that warm nature and a hint of something more in the taste of them.
Surprised, she stared as he leaned back, smiling.
Thank you, he said simply.
For what?
For not being a soldier, just for a couple of minutes. While she frowned over his words, John gathered the sleeping babies closer and rose. See you in a few hours, he called over his shoulder, as he strode from her chamber.
Alone, Erin passed her hand across her lips, and then she smiled.
John settled the babies in their baskets, tucking them in with one of the cushions from his bed. Smiling as the little one stirred and yawned, he gave them the little yawn. He gave them a good night rub behind the ears and slid beneath his covers. Then he turned onto his back, folding his arms beneath his head and smiling into the shadows of Moya.
Definitely a softie, he murmured, and then he closed his eyes and chuckled. Thank God.
The end. Oh, well done. This was In 16 Arns by Dreamshaper. Thank you so much. This was... this is so nice.
It's such a shame that we didn't see them on the show. That would have been like...
I know.
Can you just imagine the little fluff balls tussling with DRDs, having little play... stalking and pouncing on DRDs. One sitting on top of a DRD, driving around the corridor,
tail flicking around behind him like a cat on a Roomba.
I actually saw a video of a husky sitting on a Roomba like that once. It was quite impressive.
Wow.
Yeah.
Husky sitting still?
There's that.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you for joining us
on another episode of Tales from the Uncharted Territories. I'm Cocky.
I'm Kay. So Farscape. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.